All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's June 23rd, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team while showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered, so feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. A posting of this recording will be automatically posted to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and would like to support our channel, please hit and subscribe to our channel. We'll also follow up with an email so that you can share that with your team. So today we are back to our regular format for office hours with some announcements and an opportunity to ask questions and get some answers. I'd like to thank last week's participant, Taylor Dolezal, for joining us and talking about what it was like being a HashiCorp developer advocate. And the week before that, we heard from Indeni about the CloudRail product there. So today, one of the announcements that I have been tracking closely every week, this was pretty rad actually. Joe Hostany, one of the active community members here, is an avid user of our modules and Atmos and some of our other tools. He saw that we really wanted this pull request, or we really wanted this feature implemented. So he had a member of his team go ahead and implement this on Vendir. So Vendir is this tool I bring up every now and then that makes it easy to vendor from Docker images, from GitHub repos, from GitHub releases, from HTTP endpoints. You can vendor like from anywhere. But the one thing it didn't support was ignoring certain paths. And we needed that in order for it to work with our solution. So he contributed, one of the members on his team contributed a PR for this, and that was just merged the past week. Now we're just waiting on a new release of Vendir to be cut. So fingers crossed that'll be soon. We have a new Terraform module, which is for the Terraform AWS Global Accelerator. This came up out of a use case for a specific customer that needed static IPs for ingress in a load balanced environment. So in this situation, we're using AWS WAF, we're using AWS Shield, we're using the AWS ALBs with the EKS load balancer controller. And at the last minute, we found out there was this new requirement for static IPs. So how are we going to solve that? Turns out you can't associate elastic IPs with an Amazon Elastic application load balancer, at least with the EKS controller. So this proved to be a very straightforward way to go about meeting that requirement. The Global Accelerator has other features as well to, I think, accelerate the traffic across a global network. But we are using it for this one reason. And let's see, we have two other modules forthcoming. We have our Terraform AWS Macie module and the Terraform AWS Firewall Manager module. These are not yet merged. They're undergoing active development, and we've run into some challenges with these due to the newness of the actual AWS, of the Terraform AWS provider support of these leaves a lot of things lacking. And it's proved to be very difficult to tear down an AWS firewall once it's created with Terraform. So implementing automated testing for that was more difficult as well. So the branch for that is, this 372 here. So Firewall Manager and Macie. All right. So then someone from HashiCorp just hit me up and said they announced a new provider this week for managing Google Workspaces. For those of you familiar with what it used to be called, where it was just G Suite, and this is now so you can manage users and groups with Terraform. I haven't checked it out yet, and it looks like it's like a preview, tech preview release here. So expect some changes to the interface, but that's a welcome change. All right. The other announcement, Matt Calhoun on our team brought this to my attention. Amazon has announced a public registry for CloudFormation extensions. I guess you can kind of think about it like the Terraform registry, but this is for CloudFormation. However, in true Amazon fashion, I couldn't even find a fancy little website to search through these things. And I don't know if it's just API driven at this point. Has anyone looked at the CloudFormation public registry yet? Yeah, so I was trying to see.
Actually, I cannot find it, so I didn't try.
Yeah, no, I mean, I clicked on this and it just, you know, it says how to use it, I guess, in the web console. Anyways, I think Amazon would benefit from making this not behind a login wall and allowing anyone to search it, kind of like the Terraform registry. All right. Next announcement. Sorry, go on.
I think they move it to quick starts, Eric. So I'm not sure, but if you can find them there, but
AWS quick start. That would make sense if it's underneath there, and these are part of the public registry here. Interesting. I do need to check that out some more. All right. The next announcement that I'm really excited about was something that Spacelift has come out with in the past week, and we added it to our public module for provisioning Spacelift. So Spacelift has now this ability to specify a cron schedule, a drift detection schedule here, and it could be a list of schedules for how often to rerun your stack. And then you can tell it to automatically reconcile it, and it'll follow whatever policies you have in place, OPA policies you have in place to confirm that reconciliation. This is really nice, even if your organization doesn't do any ClickOps, because, for example, we just realized in a component we have that hasn't been recently applied that the credentials were no longer valid. So we don't know when that stopped working. We hadn't needed to apply it for a while, and this was for working with Datadog. So if we had drift detection running, we would have caught when those keys expired or had been revoked. And then there's always the obvious use cases, right, where you have people logging into the console, making some changes, and those were never upstream to your source control, or somebody runs some Terraform command locally, forgets to open the pull request, and it never makes its way through. So drift detection is absolutely critical when you're running a large environment. Now, this is different from like drift CTL. We've talked about drift CTL on past office hours. Drift CTL is all about what is like your infrastructure as code coverage, like what is in Amazon but not in your version control, and gives you kind of what your coverage is. Pretty rad in and of itself. This is different. This is just making sure that what you thought you deployed with Terraform is actually what is deployed with Terraform. Is anyone practicing proper drift detection today in their infrastructure?
Actually, I was going to ask you which tool you are using for this drift detection, Eric.
Oh, and also now you know, Spacelift.
And okay, Spacelift is using proprietary solution or open source one like Drift CTL? Mind the
No,
gap.
no, no. No. So that's the difference here, right? So there are different ways you can do drift detection. And you could say the low-hanging fruit is to just rerun Terraform on a periodic basis. And if there's a plan with changes, then it's drifted, right? So that's what they've implemented. I think that's like, if we're looking at the 80-20 rule here, Pareto principle, then they've addressed 80% with 20% of the effort. Drift CTL, on the other hand, addresses the other 20% that they don't do. What's in AWS but not in Terraform. However, that takes 80% more effort and is a lot more complicated to implement. So no, they are not doing the Drift CTL approach.
Okay, what about the new flag released, I think last week, refresh only? Did you check that also?
I haven't looked at the refresh flag only. I did see the announcement around that. I'm not sure if this, I'm not sure how the drift detection is, I'm not sure if they're using that refresh functionality in Spacelift to detect it, or if they're just rerunning a plan. So
yeah,
I would have
I
to
would
look
love
into
to hear.
the docs for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But this is one of those things like, you know, you might be using Atlantis today, great, but you're not going to get this from Atlantis. There's no way to rerun periodically throughout the day your workspaces to make sure there's no drift. And another interesting, if anybody likes their Yeezy shoes, you'll know that you go here to go buy them at Easy Supply, and you're dropped into this waiting room, and well, you never get the shoes anyways. Anyways, they made it. Cloudflare has introduced the concept of waiting rooms as part of their CDN offering, which is pretty rad. So let's say you have a site which, look, you just know it can't handle more than 100 concurrent users, period. And well, you don't have the budget to re-architect it, and you do get periodic spikes. How do you handle that? And you can do that with waiting rooms. So they have the concept of waiting room where you hit, you know, a landing page, and it'll let you in based on the order that you are in the queue. So I thought that was a pretty cool generalized offering for waiting rooms. You can't do that with like CloudFormation. Oh, sorry, CloudFront. Let's see what else. Steampipe. I came across this a few times over the past week. Most recently, it was posted by someone in the sweetops Slack. Thought this was pretty cool. It provides a SQL-like interface to your cloud environments, so you can query it. It's based on a CLI interface, so it's not like you can tie this into whatever SQL tools you use today. This is more just like using a SQL-like interface from the command line. I think it would be pretty rad though if this could be something we could then connect to like our data warehouse and run reports on it.
Yeah,
maybe it is. Maybe that is possible. I haven't looked to see if it is, but what were you saying?
Yeah, very nice tool. Actually, I tested with like getting the Terraform output values. So you make sure everything is deployed, actually give you a nice reports at the end. So that's, you know, that's fancy stuff.
You know what we need? Now we need a Terraform provider for this. So you Terraform data source. So you can just use this to get anything you want from your cloud environment. That'd be pretty rad. Yeah. So I don't know much about it. There's a GitHub. Is the whole Steampipe project open source, or is there a SaaS component to it?
I think it's completely open source.
That's cool. And it supports Azure, Google Cloud, GitHub, Slack, AWS. Very cool. All right. So that's the run through of my announcements. Anyone else come across something cool over the past couple weeks?
Yeah, I got a problem where I am running Terraform agent inside on-premise data center, and there was no internet, so we need to pass down on proxy settings. So I didn't find much information, but at the end you need to pass them like environment variables, and that's it. So if anyone run into that issue in the future, yeah.
Say that one more. You were running Terraform in an air-gapped kind of setup, or?
Yeah, like on-premise data center, on the production servers, there were no internet connectivity. So you need to pass down proxy settings to Terraform, like environment variables.
Yeah, there's also I've never used it, but HashiCorp has some CLI, I don't remember what it's called. It's used for bundling all the artifacts together.
I think it's called TF-bundle.
Bundle?
And it's
bundle?
inside the Terraform
That's
repo,
what
as
it
far as I
was.
understand.
Okay.
And I know Lauren uses it. Because he's
Terraform bundle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've never used it. They don't distribute a separate release for it, is my understanding. So you have to use the Go build to run it. And it's pretty nice though, I guess, especially if you want to have a true snapshot of a point in time of all the artifacts required to do a Terraform run. Terraform provider's mirror command. Huh, I haven't seen that either. Terraform provider's mirror command downloads the providers required for the current configuration and copy them to a directory in the local file system.
Yeah, we need to reread the documentation again, guys.
So,
honestly, that provider's mirror command, I'm like, what? What would you use that for? How do we like? It's crazy how there's just like there's probably 10 commands I don't know about that are just hidden in there. Just because it's such a big tool at this point. It's kind of cool. It's also, learn something new every day.
Yeah, I also Terraform Google example foundation. So I was looking through this example foundation for Google Cloud, and then I was looking here and I saw in the providers somewhere here, where was it? Saw something else I hadn't seen before. So I was going to ask people this provider meta, and it refers to a module at some ref. I don't know what this is about. Anyone enlighten me on this? Come on, Vlad, you know the answer. You know the answer to all these esoteric questions.
Usually when they're related to AWS, this is Google.
Oh, no, this is not Google. This is not Google. This is Terraform. This is a definition inside the Terraform block for provider meta. And I haven't had a chance to wrap my head around it yet or look it up.
Absolutely no idea what that is.
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
I did have one comment on that, like the module or provider downloader. I could totally see a use for that in some environments I used to work in that were air gapped, particularly like on government stuff where you need to have a really tight like software configuration where you say exactly what versions of everything that you're using and even provide that library or whatever. That would be awesome. Just say, hey, I'm going to snapshot everything that I'm using and bundle it up. And by the way, here it is, I could totally see using that. Yeah,
I agree. Same. I was going to ask Andrew Roth, but he's not on the call. I'd be interested if he was doing that, since he's working on government projects. All right.
I posted the link in the Zoom chat for provider meta. It's an experimental feature, first of all, according to in the Zoom chat, not the Slack. Let me post it.
Oh, okay.
Posted it in office hours. It's experimental, which is interesting, and it's related to getting tracking data for who's using your provider according to one sentence, but I'm not sure about that. So
yeah, I couldn't suss it out. Like, I mean, we get metrics from the provider from the registry, and we get metrics from the registry on the provider. I couldn't understand this bridge. All right, and then onto Q&A. So let's get to some questions. And one question, okay, I'm going to commandeer this because this is coming from me. I have a question for everyone else, how to solve this. So, you know, there's like conf test and tflint and tfsec, and there's we had the demo from Indeni on CloudRail, and there's Bridge Crew, and there's all these things out there. But so one of the things that we've had a problem with running a large open source community and trying to open it up for reviewers is enforcing some conventions around the kinds of changes we should be accepting from contributors. And we've had this situation recently come up more than once where outputs are deleted. And there's almost no reason to delete those outputs. And when an output is deleted, it's more or less a breaking change. And that should be in a change log. We haven't been good about change logs, but we're we're definitely thinking about how to implement it. The next thing is, like, you know, if you delete a default value from a module, suddenly it becomes required, and that's another breaking change. So we would want to make sure that those get captured in a change log. So the only way you can really identify when these kinds of changes happen is if you're looking at a diff between what's in the main branch versus what's in the pull request, and then having some policy around that. So like, if this input is deleted or if this output is deleted, then make sure that the change log file was modified. Obviously, we could script everything like this together. I was just wondering if anyone has seen someone else try and solve something like this, where you have policy enforcement on the actual content changes in files via GitHub Actions, ideally.
I have not, but I feel like you need a git-diff in a JSON format.
Yes. Yes.
And then you can run OPA against it, right? You
can
write a Rego
exactly.
policy that would do it.
Yeah.
That sounds like a cool project.
I was trying to look up if I could see if a lot of these tools these days support an output format of JSON. And I was trying to Google diff JSON. All you do is find 100 tools that give you a diff of JSON, not how to get JSON in diff format. So my Google foo was weak on this.
I wonder if you could get the diff via GitHub's API as a JSON format.
Oh, you know, that's actually that you can do. Yeah. That's smart. Like, why do this the hard way when we can just get the diff querying? Because we can get the diff, just from the GitHub API for this change, and then run OPA on that. Nice. I like it. Matt, we'll look into that. Yeah.
If you want help, let me know. I'm interested in this idea.
All
and
right.
I really like Rego. I'm gonna quickly just shout out. Rego is awesome, and the fact that it's like so easily testable, like you can write tests like nothing. It's awesome.
Have you been writing tests for Rego policies?
Yeah. So I wrote some Spacelift policies, and I can share this with you after. But
I want to see that.
They talk about, Rego is really testable in the Spacelift docs, and I was like, let's see how that goes. It took me like 10 minutes to write tests that completely covered a full policy.
Wow, awesome. we really need that. So in this past week, I didn't make this announcement because I was focused more on the drift detection. but in the Spacelift module that we have, so Spacelift is one of the taco providers, Terraform automation collaboration software. And in this, we support now policies. You can have as many policies as you want, and you can specify a path to where the policies are, and the module will provision them. And then any component in your stack, you can tell it which policies you want enabled. So this allows you to assign specific policies to specific. Every time I get a phone call, my headphone gets jacked. Right. So Matt, because we have this now, and now we have a catalog of policies here. So if we go to catalog policies, here's some of the regos that we ship with. This would be super rad for us to add testing on these.
Yeah. I got a slightly busy week, but I'll try and get an example up for you, and we can maybe wire up an action to it.
Yeah,
it's dead simple.
It would be something we can have Andre work on. So that'd be cool. So if we get the example up, I'll have Andre knock that out so we get some tests on this, because that's the challenge with these things. The wrong policy can really
totally bork the whole thing. Yeah, particularly those access policies, and like, you guys don't do a login policy, but we should actually via this module do a login policy. But
well, you see this format now, you see trigger.retries. Trigger is the type of policy, and retries is an arbitrary name, so you can create as many trigger policies as you want, and an access policy. So if there's a type of policy which is the login policy, which I thought was this access one, then we could add that too.
There's login and there's access. Where login is if the user is actually authenticated to log in, then access is if they have access for a particular stack.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, let's talk more about that. That's great, Matt. Thanks for sharing.
Stuff.
Okay, so that's good. I like that we have a good path forward for how we could get this git-diff through the GitHub API on the pull request, and then run a rego policy against that to error if certain conditions are not true. All right, so then the next thing would be another question I'm going to hijack. Sorry, guys. I'm using up my quota here. I want to ask a question. So we've been using a lot of AWS SSO. We have our Terraform module for this that we are using, and that all works really well. And it supports permission sets. And I guess this looks wrong. I don't know why. It looks like the docs generated here are bad. Anyways, going back to the hey, Andy, if you're listening, can you make a note that we gotta, something's wrong here with these Terraform docs here.
Got it.
All right. But that was not my question. That was not my problem. So the problem is that when you're using EKS and the auth config map is you need to map it to IAM roles. And when you're using SSO with permission sets, those role names are non-deterministic. So back to where I was here on my slides. So Jeremy helped frame this question, see if anyone else has tried to solve this. So how do you write a trust policy for an IAM role to allow or disallow AWS SSO roles from another account to assume the role, given that the AWS SSO generates non-deterministic IAM role names that change over time? Anyone had to deal with this yet? So what we're doing right now is literally we use a the external data provider, run a shell script called the AWS CLI, query the query for the SSO roles, and we get around it. But we generally try and avoid all usage of external data providers because it makes it very hard to make a portable module that works on Linux, Windows, etc. And a lot of people using SSO, and I don't know, and a lot of people using EKS, but when we work on these things, it feels like there's no company using both. And Terraform.
For EKS, I can comment that it's not a fixed problem. It's annoying.
Yeah.
It happens. And personally, I'm not really connecting to clusters that much.
Yeah.
So it's not a concern. And that also applies to the customers that I am working with. It's not really a concern if somebody doesn't have access. We can redo that. The names, the role names do change, but not often enough to require a more complex solution right now.
Yeah, understood. So it's kind of like the answer we seem to be getting, and it just seems so ugly that it has to be that way. It does remind me, though, we have something cool coming out. It's too soon to really make an announcement on it, but everyone's seen our Terraform provider for utils. We have this one that we released earlier this year, which adds data sources for like doing deep merging. It's also how we do our stack configuration, our very advanced stack configuration logic. Well, now we have a provider that we started today, which is going to be our escape hatch for AWS specific things that we need to accomplish, of which this might be one of them. So we can query the APIs and get these role names without having to shell out to Bash. All right, so that was that. Oh, I put this in the wrong place. This was actually an announcement, not a talking point. Matt brought this up. This is kind of cool. I mean, we're mostly, let's face it, we're mostly doing immutable infrastructure these days until we're not. So we have a customer that has a bunch of legacy software that we're lifting over, and it turns out that, yeah, we need to go the traditional route with these EC2 instances. I forget this. Talon D is one of them, actually, and this is something that is pretty nice, that you can now generate crash consistent backups. So the concern is when you take a backup of a running system is that you could get data, you wouldn't capture the data in flight that hasn't been committed yet. So I guess there's some way now you can ensure that the backup is at what has been flushed to disk. And this is for both EBS and also for creating AMIs. Formerly, the recommended best practice for creating AMIs was, right, you shut down the instance and snapshot it and bring it back up again. Let's see, next question. Yeah, this was another question from me. We are under the gun to deliver something for Azure, and Cloud Posse specializes on AWS. So I was looking for, I like this reference architecture that I found for Google. Thought it was pretty cool. Google modules, this example foundation. I was wondering if there's any, and this, unlike the Terraform AWS modules, the Terraform Google modules is actually administered by Google itself. So I kind of like this as a reference. Has anyone seen something nice like this for Azure? The kind of foundational infrastructure, creating the equivalent of what AWS calls an organization, member accounts, single sign-on, VPC architecture, subnet architecture, stuff like that. So if anyone has any public open source module tips or reference architectures for that, I'd like to see it.
No
All
one
right.
mentioned it. No.
Yeah. Well, I guess it makes sense since we mostly, given our our SEO, we mostly attract people who use AWS, right? So somebody was
once
about
upon
to
a
say
time
something.
once upon a time I worked on Azure, and I now wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Though I think it's better now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the fact that they use Azure or they use Terraform more than they're pushing ARM, that's good. But yeah.
You know, to be honest and fair here, a nice feature of the Azure cloud, they have like a reverse engineering of the console. So whenever you work manually on the console, you can generate like ARM templates, Azure resource management templates. So neither AWS nor Google have this feature. Actually, that's a good catch for them actually. So imagine on the AWS, you can create everything from the console and then generate a CloudFormation template from that.
Yeah,
so that's
I guess it's pretty surprising Amazon doesn't support something like that. There's that Terraformer product, but I guess my concern with that is like, I guess that's great when you're in a pinch. We're not in that much of a pinch. If we were that much of a pinch, I wouldn't even do it probably. But in this case, who likes to maintain machine generated code, right? That's not the situation I'm looking for. But yeah, good to know about that. Thank you, Mohammed. All right, and the last thing was just something I saw come up. I've seen it come up multiple times in Slack, so I thought I would address it. Because there's a very elegant, easy fix for it. And I've seen, so basically, we have this AWS Keypair module, generates a TLS keypair that you can use with your EC2 instances or anywhere you need keypairs. The problem when you use that keypair module is like 99% of modules out there that implement the same kind of functionalities, they're going to write this key to a file. And that's not really cool if you're practicing, continuous delivery and GitOps with Terraform. So like chmod command and stuff like that. So we don't use this module for anything that we have. Instead, we have a very similar module, which is Terraform AWS SSM TLS SSH Keypair, which does the same exact thing, but instead of writing it to a file, it writes it to SSM. And then you're cool. Then you don't have to worry about how you persist that file between instances and between Terraform runs and between developer workstations and all that stuff. So just a pro tip there. Also, it's a great pattern in general. If you have a module that needs to generate something, you need to store it somewhere for reuse, parameter store is a wonderful place to stick it. All right, so let's flip it over to everyone else. Chonan, I know you had a question. Are you still there? Let's see, we got Chonan. I saw he joined earlier, but I guess he dropped already. Bummer. All right, let's see. I'm gonna pull up the office hours channel here. And let's see, any questions here? Is there a way to serve, so manage chaos? Michael Jenkins asks, is there a way to serve static HTML page from S3 through an ALB? Yes, there is. Well, wait, static HTML page from S3 through an ALB. Okay, I misunderstood. Like I thought serving a static page from an ALB, that is possible. Does the static page have to be on S3, Michael?
No, it doesn't have to be on S3. I guess when I was thinking about it, the way that I currently use it is I'm just serving up a static response from the ALB, but it's limited to 1,000 or 1,024 bytes. And so I was just thinking about putting more bytes in an S3 bucket and then just serving the content from there, not necessarily serving, a S3 hosted website, but serving the content, the actual bits, the HTML from S3. But in this thread, we went through a couple options, like using ECS, just a container that can serve that content. And also in the AWS channel, we went through an option of using Lambda on the back end And
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate all those. I was just trying to go through the simplicity of just having a single listener rule that just does a forward, or not a forward, but a fixed response, as opposed to having another target group and a target group attachment that is associated with a service running in ECS, or potentially a Lambda that has to be managed as well.
So this fixed response strategy won't work for you?
It works, but it's limited to 1024 bits. So I can't put
what are
as
you serving?
rich.
What
Just
are you serving?
HTML.
No,
Yeah, just CSS.
okay. Well, like, so, well,
the classical
like,
way
what are you
to do
trying
an
to
iframe.
solve though? Like, what is, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm just going to get to. But what is the problem you're trying to solve rather than the solution that you?
Yeah, the problem I'm trying to solve is a maintenance page that's
exactly okay, yeah,
as rich as the actual application page.
Yeah.
So with 1024 bits, I'm like, it's serving a scaled down, just like almost stark version of like, hey, we're going to be right back, but I'd like to give something a little richer.
And I think there's a really elegant solution for this that somebody else was just saying here, is that you're just going to serve a fixed response with a basic page with an iframe that's going to include the static site from S3.
Gotcha.
Could be a JavaScript as well. You simply just include and initialize, and you can have that JavaScript or metadata do a reload, so that when your site is actually back, it will retry the site.
Okay, cool.
That's what
I like that
before.
idea.
Yeah, that's even nicer.
So the
that's
user
the other
doesn't have
thing.
to click anything. It will just, the page will appear once you're done.
Yeah.
That's a pro tip too. Anybody using a status page that doesn't automatically refresh, be advised that people will see that page and not refresh on their own. However, don't set your refresh too frequent, because you can DOS attack yourself. Exactly. All right.
You can also handle this at DNS level. So Route 53 can handle if your primary backend is unhealthy. So if they cannot reach the ALB because the ALB is returning errors, they can be redirecting to maintenance.example.com or something like that. You can do that at DNS level with pretty low TTL, and it's a easy way of handling it. It's not at ALB
just surprised. Level. I mean, if anybody has looked at their load balancer logs, they will see so many legitimate random requests coming into them from other hosts, because the IP it's on was once part of another load balancer or something. And this DNS caching thing is a real problem out there. So I would avoid DNS-based solutions.
I would say nah, because the entire AWS system is built on DNS. So I would just ignore those, minor percentage that might hit that. That's just the reality of it these days.
Yeah, as it is, we're trying to keep it at the ALB if at all possible. It just simplifies the way that we would, serve the maintenance page.
You
and
can start
while
with
we're
an
making
image
the
source
changes,
and have a big image source from S3, or then up it from there to whatever advanced JavaScript or anything else you want.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that was a great question. I like it. It's relevant to actually some things that we're working on. And I'm going to suggest that as well. Let's see. Do we get Chonan back? Is he on? No. All right. Let's see. Any other questions in the office hours channel here?
You want to revisit the role assumption question you had?
Oh, yeah, I would love to.
I think it's interesting. Generally, if you permit assumption from a different principle, usually what you do is you permit the entire account, right? So you basically delegate the owner of the other account to assume your role, right? Then it's up to the owner in that account to control what users or roles in that account has access to assume in the other one. Except you could add conditions, right? In the actual target role in your target account. One of the ways to do it, I guess, is to use a condition on the, what's it called, the external ID, I think.
Yeah.
And if you could do a string equals on that, but a multiple string equals. So for any value, string equals.
Mm-hmm.
You could also do rotation of some sort of shared secret, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's
yeah,
a good
I
idea.
I wouldn't be able to, I don't know this problem well enough to be able to probably even debate it. I do know that this was specifically related with AWS SSO together with EKS and the auth
Yeah,
map.
the problem is that in the other account where you would otherwise be enforcing limits, those people can be admins, and we might still not want to let them assume the role on our account.
Yeah.
So we can't make it based on any mutable parameter of the other account.
But you could theoretically do it via sort of a shared secret, right?
Well, no, because the admin in the other account will have access to the shared secret.
How will he though? Because the shared secret is something you specify on assumption. It's not stored anywhere. Typically, it's not anyway. It's in your actual API call.
Well, it's got to be stored somewhere for the people we want to use to be able to do the assume role.
Yeah, sure. And that, I guess,
if
is
they can have access to it, then the admin in their account can have access to it, unless it's done completely out of band.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really see a different way of doing it.
Sorry, I don't mean to be harsh.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying, but I don't see another way of doing it. And
I don't either.
If anyone has, if the admins of whatever environment that these users are running things in have access to the user's environment, nothing the users do or type is safe.
Right. So when we were using fixed roles, this was not a problem because we could require that they be in the right role.
Okay.
And although the admins could theoretically access that role, that is a different issue.
Yeah. But it sounds to me like what you're after is this secret thing, because it's only checked in the target role you're assuming, in the target policy of the role you're assuming, which the admins will not have access to. But of course, if the admins have access to what you're inputting, what your users are inputting, then you can't do anything about it.
It would work if the principal accepted a wildcard on the role, or a wildcard to match the partial role name. But it doesn't.
I'm not familiar with the AWS SSO, but doesn't it support attributes? Can it inject attributes when assuming roles, and then on the target account you can make a condition based on that?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
Yeah, if it does, if you
can
get
do that,
like
I posted a link.
Yeah, it does support that.
Attribute-based access controls, and that came out end of last year. All right.
I haven't used it, but I know it's a thing.
Yeah, so with that you probably can associate that with an internal group and limit access based on that.
Yeah, that looks interesting.
Yeah, well, something to look into, Jeremy.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, cool. We got about 10 more minutes on the books for today. Any other questions we can get to? I haven't checked yet the Zoom chat.
Yeah, I think Cody had a question about vendoring. Maybe want to go a little deeper in that topic.
Cody's question. Oh, there, Eric, would love to hear more about your concerns around vendor feature you were waiting for. What situation is that you were trying to solve, hoping to identify what the concern was so I can avoid it in a familiar situation? Yeah, sure. I'll just, I'll rehash that briefly here for you, Cody. So the problem for us is, how do I describe it? Well, Terraform root modules. Let's see here. So GitHub, Cloud Posse, Terraform, AWS components, right? So if I go into modules here and pull up any one of these, like ECR, this is a root module. And root modules always need a backend definition. But the backend that you're using is very specific to the to your environment. Some people are using Terraform Cloud as their backend. Some people use maybe Spacelift or M0 Scalar as their backend. We use S3 pretty much everywhere. And hell, your backend doesn't even need to be on Amazon. You could be terraforming Amazon and using a Google Cloud bucket as your backend, right? So the problem is that backend file is unique to your environment, but you're vendoring a reusable component. And what I refer to as components are Terraform root modules. So in our use case here, we want to vendor this in to our local infrastructure repository. And when we do that, we don't want it to delete our backend file. But the tool that we are using, called Vendir, by default will delete any files locally that don't exist remotely. And that's why this ignore paths option was essential for us, so that we could say, hey, vendor this remote component from modules account map, but don't delete this file if it exists, which is our local backend configuration. And in our case, you'll see we even generate that backend configuration programmatically. Hence, it's in JSON, JSON serialized backend config. So, Cody, I don't know if you are still on, but that's the explanation for that. Let's see, how would you teach Terraform infrastructure as code at a school with limited resources? Is a question from Brandon. Brandon, are you still on the line? What are the limitations here that we're working within? Is it like not enough hardware, like workstations? Is it not a cloud account or budget to fund the cloud account? What are the limits that you have? Brandon VH, you're muted. And I guess we don't have Brandon. So, or did they just message? Brandon, limited budget for the training account, but also fine. So yeah, so that's a good one to work around. So first of all, depending on what your use case is and what clouds you want to work with, there's a lot of free credits available and a lot of goodwill out there for education. So I would first reach out to if you're talking Amazon specifically, I would talk to Amazon about getting some educational credits there because they want people learning and hitting the platform. The other thing is, if it's just to learn infrastructure as code, it doesn't have to be Amazon, and you can use cheaper options like DigitalOcean is dirt cheap for provisioning infrastructure and getting started with the basics of infrastructure as code. Someone else here says, Jeff Lanza, regarding coursework, he's done plenty of demos on both AWS and GCP that fit within the free tier. Exactly. So Amazon does have a free tier. What you can also do is use service control policies at the organizational level to prevent the account from launching instances that are not part of your free tier, for example.
Yeah, I think I can answer that question, guys. So coming from a third world country, so people here sometimes doesn't have a credit card, and believe me, they does not have. So like I said before, I think like a couple of weeks ago, local stack allow you to have like zero cost testing environment, okay? And you could train your students using local machine without even internet connection if you don't have that also to offer them. So yeah, look at local stack. I think that should cover your use cases. But at the end, you still need to use like Azure or AWS, but you can teach them the basics using local stack. Totally, you can apply everything like CICD, everything you do for AWS, you can do it with local stack actually to mark your API, requests.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great suggestion as well. And again, it's just getting started. Like even if local stack doesn't support everything you want to do, it shouldn't matter because you're really just trying to show the fundamentals of infrastructure as code. So good tip. Let's see here. Somebody else, Michael Jenkins posts a link here for education.github.com/pack. Let's see, what is that about? GitHub Student Developer Pack, learn to ship software like a pro. So that's interesting.
Basically, that's like a lot of partners that GitHub has, and they provide a bundle with their like premium services. And if you're a student, you sign up. Some of them you get the whole premium access while you're a student. Some of them it's like Microsoft, the free tier, basically. DigitalOcean is the free tier plus some credit. But yes, if you're a student, that's a pretty good deal because you get, like I said, premium access or top tier access to these services, but they're free.
That's great. That's a nice little aggregation here of promotions. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see what else.
I tested this one, guys. I emailed GitHub for a local university here in Palestine, and actually that's pretty neat. Offering for all of these services actually. So that's another option. Yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. We are at the end of the hour, so I'd like to wrap things up here and remind everyone to head over to youtube.com/c/cloudposse. You can subscribe to our channel there and get all our past episodes of Office Hours, as well as the Cloud Posse Explains series, which is very interesting outtakes from past Office Hours sessions. So check that out. And if you haven't yet subscribed to our Office Hours calendar invite, head over to cloudposse.com/officehours. You'll get a email invitation inviting you to our future sessions of Office Hours. We also have a Slack team, very active. Head over to slack.cloudposse.com and meet the rest of the community there. Get help, ask questions, help out. Love to see you there. And see you all next week, same place, same time, every Wednesday at 11:30 Pacific. Talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.